Hi guys, my name's Jack Nagel and I've been in recovery for over 10 years now and completely transformed my life out of addictive patterns. And with Real Drug Talk and our treatment company called Connection-Based Living, I've helped hundreds of other people completely change their life as well. Like Haley, who's over 6 years in recovery. You can check her story out on our YouTube channel. And James, who's over 2 years in recovery now, you can also check his story out on our YouTube channel. Because of the mad times that we live in, we have put together a book. It's called The 11 Definitive Steps to Transform Your Life Out of Addictive Patterns Without Having to Go to Rehab. You can find it by scrolling down in the description that I'm pointing at here. If you just scroll down and click that link, it'll take you to the special offer on the book. It's super cheap. And also you get some free bonuses along with it as well. So if you're looking to transform out of addictive patterns and get some change and, have things to be different and joyful and have some freedom in your life, I'd highly recommend taking a look at this book. It could be the most important thing you read in 2021 and 2022 moving forward. Into the video, guys. Peace. And that's how it happens, isn't it? And I think it's a really interesting, kind of story that you tell about alcohol use and how it happens for people. And I think that's, I don't know, tell me if you disagree, but I think that's part of the thing that we have to demystify a little bit about addiction. Like when you sort of started, it's not like you were drinking, and it probably, even though you might have been drinking a lot, might not have even been a problem per se, but you're kind of drinking that amount and your risk factors go up. So then when something, like you said, you moved here, you had the separation and then you had the stress and whatever, when you have those other risk factors come in, it's kind of like the perfect storm starts forming. And then all of a sudden, the partying and the drinking, that behavioral pattern turns into like a coping mechanism. And then boom, you're stuck with an addictive pattern.
Yeah, I think I'd had the addictive pattern for quite a long time. Like I'd gone to an AOD counsellor back in 2001, and I was on naltrexone.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was sort of, it's not linear. It's in out, shake it all about. It's like, oh my God, I've had something absolutely gut-wrenchingly mortifying and awful, and I'm the worst person in the world. Right, I'm going to go to an AA meeting, and then you get there, and you're like, no, I'm not like these people.
Yeah.
But I mean, also I grew up in an environment where alcohol and drugs were just part and parcel of just normal. So, it just, I would always be, because I surrounded myself with people like me, which isn't hard to do. I would just always dismiss it. And so it was actually almost easier in a way when it got to the point where I just couldn't deny it anymore, because it was black and white. Whereas I think there's a really good analogy in Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Drinking, which I think Annie Grace refers to as well, about the pitcher plant.
Yeah.
So you start off and you're kind of like, you still think you're in control. It's that alcohol use disorder, alcohol use, what's it called? Yeah, disorder. They're like the spectrum of alcohol abuse.
Yeah.
And, you're sort of incrementally moving down. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly believe it can happen to anyone. But I think also, particularly if you've got a history of trauma, like you say, it's the perfect recipe. It's the perfect recipe to eventually, because that stuff needs to come out.
Yeah.
And the more you're not addressing it and using the alcohol, the less effective it is. And I remember towards the end just going, this isn't working anymore. It's not working with my anxiety. It's not stopping the feelings from, this just unhappiness.
Yeah. 100%.
It's just not even, it's not fun. There's nothing I'm enjoying about this. And I remember actually sitting out on the deck crying with the wine, like late at night, just going, I don't want this, but I can't stop it.
Yeah. So interesting. But through all this time, were you still holding down, like a corporate job and all that sort of stuff? Or did the wheels start to fall off there as well?
Well, I just finished the degree and I was doing some freelancing. So I was still doing some work, but what I would do was I would have my strategies around how I was able to drink up to a certain point before I got completely shit-faced and then wasn't able to work. Yeah. So, I would just start off early with like beers so that I didn't get really drunk really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'd still be able to do like some work up until early afternoon.
It's funny, isn't it? It becomes like a full-time job, like just listening to you talk about it. Like you said, like all the strategies, the thinking that goes into it. Oh,
Oh,
just drink beers.
alternating the bottle shops.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, alternating the bottle shops, and I would still try and convince myself each time I went to the bottle shop, because I would only buy one bottle of wine or six beers at a time, because I'd be like, no, I'm not going for another one after this, and I would literally get home, neck it in half an hour, and go back out, but to a different one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just a quick interruption to let you guys know that we've created a complete new book called The 11 Definitive Steps to Get Recovery Without Going to Rehab. And for a short time only, we've got a super special deal on it where you can get the book for a heavily discounted price, plus some free bonuses, the book audio recorded, and a free self-care planner that I've used to help me start my day and finish my day in a really nice and freeing fashion. So if that's of interest to you and you're looking for some answers on how to get some transformation out of addiction without having to lock yourself away in rehab for ages, maybe you might want to check out the book. Search for it in the description below. Back to the video. Peace. So what was the final moment for you where you decided to stop? Was it that time when you're on the deck or on the balcony with the wine and crying, or did it?
It was close to that time. Yeah, I was getting to a stage where I kind of didn't really care if I lived or died.
Yeah.
And I knew it was out of control. I couldn't. It was very evident that, you know, I couldn't pretend otherwise anymore.
Yeah.
Like once I picked up a drink, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. There was a chance I wouldn't remember, you know, most of the time after that. Probably about half an hour to an hour after that, I wouldn't necessarily, if I'd gone out, I wouldn't remember how I was getting home.
Yeah.
You know, like,
wow.
It was just, who knew what was going to happen after I'd started drinking?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
So I'd really had lost control, and there were a couple of times when one time when I went to emergency because I was in such a mess, and my daughter had to take me, and it was just the shame of it all.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was in such a lot of emotional pain. I think I just knew it had to end.
Yeah, 100%. So how did you go about that? Like, what was that like? You know, what kind of help did you get?
So I was not coping. So I went to my therapist that I was seeing at the time, a psych that I've been seeing for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And she said to me, you know, and I had been drinking before I went there, and she said to me, I think you've hit rock bottom, basically.
Yeah.
And so then I contacted Biala here in Brisbane, and I said, I need to go in somewhere. I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
It was past that. I would find a strategy to get out of doing whatever was needed.
Yeah.
And so I went into inpatient detox at the hospital.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get in for 10 days. So I was admitted to emergency, and then a couple of times I was in emergency, and then they said, yeah, because mentally I was not in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and how long did you spend in that facility? And
I think it was about 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with detox, as you know, Jack, it's just around the safe withdrawal from the either the drugs or the alcohol. There's not a lot of sort of psychosocial education or anything like that in there. And, you know, most people use it as a stepping stone to go to rehab.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel, well, I actually didn't know I could get rehab on my private health.
Yeah.
But I felt like the circuit breaker was enough of the 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So because you mentioned, and this is what I'm interested to talk to you about. And again, like we've been lucky lately to have a few people on the show that sort of, not that it's any different, but I just think it's this, and I don't know if you agree, it's the segment of the community that probably I think experiences the most stigma because they're not recognized as having like an addiction, because in some aspects like yourself, they're able to hold things together. And yeah, that is that sort of professional person or functioning person, all those sorts of things. So how did you, like you mentioned, that you created Untoxicated because it's like what you felt like you needed. So like, what was that experience like after you went to detox? Was it self-determined? Did you speak to anyone? Like, how did you decide what you were going to do to stay sober?
I just knew I had to. For a long time, the label alcoholic was not helpful for me at all, and I know it's not helpful for a lot of people. But for me to actually maintain sobriety, it was useful because there was no there was no wriggle room. The problem was the wriggle room for me. You know, and the wriggle room for me about whether I was or whether I wasn't, or, you know, whatever. So it just had to be, I'm not a black and white thinker at all. I'm all shades of grey, but it had to be black and white for me. So, and I know different mindsets work for different people. So when I came out, I was just like, I'd scared myself as to the place that I was in before, and I didn't want to go back there. And I worried that I wouldn't make it if I did. You know, which sounds sort of like incredibly dramatic, but I was, because I was in such emotional turmoil and pain and everything, that I just thought, I that level of sort of desperation and everything, I just didn't want to go back there. I scared myself that the place that I was at. So I came out and I, you know, just threw everything at it, really. I did a little bit of AA. That wasn't really my cup of tea. And I thought, you know, when I started Untoxicated, I kind of thought, you know, with AA, and I know it works for a lot of people, and I don't like to condemn any particular type of recovery. I think people should absolutely try everything for themselves. I was seeing an AEDT counsellor, but I just thought, you know, there's got to be some fun in recovery as well. And I thought, I know if someone tells me what to do, I'm not going to do it. So I wanted to have something that was using a carrot approach, not a stick approach, in that drawing people to it because it was something that they actually thought was like appealing, as opposed to, oh God, I've got to go, you know, because we're not a recovery program, but I mean, obviously it is part of what people use if they are either in recovery or trying to cut back. So I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to be something that was a bit lighter and a bit more removing that stigma, because I was like, fuck this, I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not, the sobriety needs a bit of a makeover. Like, who says that this stuff's boring? Who decided that? No, I don't agree. And so I'm going to do something about it.
Love it. No, it's perfect. And it's funny, right? Like, it's something that so many people say to me when they come through our program or just talking to people out in the community or whatever. Like, and you're right. Like, I'm the same. I've tried to be conscious about it as well, because I did like 12-step stuff for a long time, and it helped me like change everything. But that, like, there's some points about it that just a lot of people don't gel with, and it's not like bagging it or whatever, but I think that's a thing. Like, there's a certain type of person that doesn't want to go to like a community hall for the rest of their life, doesn't want to talk about like bad stuff that, you know, consistently happened to them for 20 years or whatever. And they're looking for some fun, for some other like-minded people. And it's just something that's missing, you know?
I think there's a couple of parts there. I think that there's a lot of people that don't, want to get off the hamster wheel early. So they don't want to reach rock bottom and need to go to AA.
That's right.
And so we've got to provide them options to be able to do that.
And that's a massive segment of the community.
It's a massive segment. It is huge. And so what if those people ever did walk through the doors of a meeting, they would go like I used to do, which is like, I don't belong here. This isn't, I'm not, no. And then they don't go back. And, you know, or they kind of go like, oh, I haven't got a problem. I'm nowhere near as bad as these people.
Yeah.
I'm only necking a bottle of wine a night. God. So I think that we need to give people opportunities to get out earlier.
Yeah.
And those people aren't necessarily people who are going to identify with the kind of terminology we use around addiction.
Yeah.
So we want to give them a way to get off that's in a non-threatening way. That's not like, oh, you've now got to be, you know, classed as an addict, or but what invariably happens is those people will start, say, coming to our stuff, and then they'll start tapping into other resources, because
that's right,
all the other stuff comes up.
That's right.
But at the entry point, they might not be ready for that. And I think the other thing is that for people who are in recovery, even if you are in a program, and again, I don't want to bag AA, they were, I found it really useful at the outset just to be around people who understood and to be able to go and have a rant. But how unfair it was that I now couldn't drink. There's not a lot socially, even for people who are in recovery.
Hope you enjoyed that video, and thanks for supporting the Real Drug Talk YouTube channel. Every video you watch, comment, subscribe to helps us to push through the YouTube algorithms and hopefully reach more people and help them out. Now listen, we're living in the most crazy times for the past 100 years, and because of that, as I mentioned throughout this video, we've created a brand new ebook that we have a special deal on called the 11 Definitive Steps to Transforming Out of Addictive Patterns Without Having to Go to Rehab. So if that sounds of interest to you, check out the links below. You can click on it and claim the super special deal that we have on it at the moment. Again, hope you and your family are doing okay, and would love for you to check out the rest of the videos on our channels and share them with anyone else that you think it might help. See you in the next video. Peace.